7th. I'm Trey Crowder. That's Mark Agee. What's up, Mark?
What's up, Trey?
This is Evening Skews. As always, we like to begin on the Skews with an update on American dumbassery. And tonight's no different, except it is a little bit different because tonight we're prognosticating a bit. Because, see, we pride ourselves at being on the bleeding edge of dumb shit in this country, and thus we felt it just wouldn't be right to name a dumbass of the day without first hearing the remarks that are soon to be made by President Donald Trump at the Republican National Convention
So,
in a mere matter of hours.
so what you're saying is we're Nostradamusing, huh?
We're Nostradamusing. I
Yeah,
like it. I like it. But
lean
yes,
into it.
yeah, we just felt it would be disingenuous, if not outright irresponsible, to name some other story or some other soundbite as the dumbass clip of the day when we know that the dumbass in chief is yet to speak this very evening. So, Mark, I know we're not Vegas odds makers or anything, but what do you think is going to be the dumbest shit out of his mouth here in a couple hours?
Um, well, usually in stuff like this, he kind of sticks to the teleprompter, especially with no live crowd to cheer him on. Um, Although they're doing it at the White House, right? They probably make some employees stay to clap for him. So I don't know. Um,
I what I've been reading is that they're expected to have like a crowd of like 1,000 people there.
okay.
I don't know how they're going about who gets to come and who doesn't, or how that's. I don't know the details behind that, but I've read multiple places because obviously he's getting a lot of flack for that, rightfully so, especially after his Tulsa rally or whatever.
Mhm.
It's less than he normally packs into a small area, but yeah, from what I've read, they're expecting like 1,000 people at this address at the White House. So that's a good dumbass start.
Yeah, I mean it is. I would say that I think they're testing. Well, there's like rapid testing now, so that they wouldn't have in Tulsa. So maybe it'll be fine. I don't know. But they would lie about the results anyway, even if a bunch of people test positive, because you can't have like if 500 of those 1,000 test positive, it's not going to be enough to be a good crowd. So you got to have you got to have somebody to fire the t-shirt cannons into, you know.
Right, absolutely. So here's one thing I'm wondering about it. Like, a huge factor for Trump, or a huge thing he leaned on in 2016, was being, an outsider, draining the swamp and all that. He's not part of the, bureaucratic machine in Washington, and that was part of the appeal for him for a lot of people. Is he going to keep that up, and how do you go about that when you have been the sitting president for 4 years? Just
You
bullshit.
pretend. You just
Right,
pretend. You just
right.
keep. I mean, it's all this hustle in the world. Like everybody, George W. did the same thing. He ran as a Washington. He ran as a Washington outsider in 2000, even though his dad was president, his granddad was a senator. He ran then he ran again as a Washington outsider in 2004, even though he'd been president for 4 years, presided over 9/11. Um, yeah, I don't know.
Well,
It's a weird juke. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't get. I
well,
forget
I
what it was.
figure I figure a lot of it will come down to emphasizing how much of an insider Joe Biden is. Because he's a senator with almost 50 years of experience, whatever, and I feel like that's going to be part of the spin. I mean, they've been shitting on Biden the whole week, obviously, and of course they're going to do that. But I'm saying when it comes to this particular dynamic, I think that's going to be a lot of the angle there. Is like, yeah, Trump's been the sitting president for 4 years, but Joe Biden has been in government for half a century, and he was there for the preceding 8 years, the worst 8 years in American history, according to Trump and his ilk. So I figure it's going to be some of that type of shit.
There's gonna be that, but also when he starts freewheeling, he'll talk about Kenosha, which I think we're gonna get to later, and I
Yeah.
think he'll probably talk about do Kamala birther stuff, even if it's just
Uh-huh.
a brief aside. He can't help himself,
Yeah,
I
well,
guess.
that's right. So, as part of the whole shitting on Biden and also talking about, he's the ultimate insider and that type of thing, I'm sure they're going to keep up the rhetoric that they've already had going all week at the RNC, where they talk about, like, obviously things are terrible in America right now. Well, obviously to me, but apparently not to everybody. But what they've been trying to do is sort of pitch this idea that things will only be even worse if Biden and the Democrats were in charge, right?
Hmm.
And I'm sure that's going to be heavily featured about like the nightmarish dystopia that awaits us all if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris actually win. And part of that will be based upon the idea that they are such extreme progressives that it will just turn us into like, a communist gay sex food stamp factory of a country or whatever. But
I mean, the day after election day, I'm definitely going on and using some food stamps to buy gay sex. That's the number one thing I'm doing right after inauguration.
For sure. But like the thing about that is, and it was the same way with Obama too for me, because I was a huge Obama fan when he was running the first time, and I love Obama and I miss him every goddamn day. But like this thing, they don't realize that the beef most self-described liberals have with Biden, Obama, Kamala Harris as Democrats is that they're nowhere near progressive enough. Do you know what I mean? Like they talk about them like these radicals, but for most of us, the whole issue is that they're too moderate in the first place. And I feel like, I'm sure a lot of them like do know that, but I feel like a lot of them also don't realize that. And imagine how freaked out they would be if they really did.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We got like 100 years of brainwashing, poisoning from like against any sort of left wing movement. The case in point, the NBA stuff. Those guys went on strike. We don't have a vocabulary for it because the labor movement's been so crushed in America that they called it a boycott, which is like somebody made this point. It's using the language of consumers. A boycott's when you don't buy a product.
Right.
When you don't go to work,
you withhold your labor. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you withhold your labor, that's a strike, which is what the NBA players are doing.
But we don't have a mental framework for it. Like you try to explain to anybody, a regular American, that like even just 30 years of history ago, that Obamacare was based upon Mitt Romney's healthcare plan in Massachusetts, which was built upon a Heritage Foundation plan that Newt Gingrich put out in opposition to Hillary Clinton's healthcare plan in the early 90s. This is literally Obamacare is what Newt Gingrich proposed in 1994 as a market-based solution. So all Democrats govern like the right-wing parties in England, and are treated as though they're left-wing parties in North Vietnam, and it's pretty insane.
Yeah. Getting right back to that, but a quick comment about the mustache. I get a lot of them. Larry Mers said, "Careful, Trey. That mustache is beginning to look like it belongs on a Confederate general." You know what, Larry? Like, why not a Union general? We all know why. Because of how I sound, because of my accent. No, but you're right. The self-roast I've been doing about the mustache is that I've got a whole Confederate barista thing going on. I feel like that sort of sums up what I'm doing here.
And I'm just going to do this because it's an important fact check for me. The 300,000 Southerners fought for the Union. You could very well have been a Union general.
That's right. Yeah, even with this accent, Larry. Anyway, back to what we were talking about. Yeah, I used to have at my old job back in Tennessee, and I worked with a lot of young professional Republicans, not redneck old boys from my hometown is my point. Yeah. People who are more articulate, generally speaking, about their arguments and things like that. And this was during the Obama era, and they obviously just hated Obama, couldn't stand him. And we would have discussions about it, and I would tell them I was a huge Obama fan, but then I would say look, I've been disappointed by a lot of things about Obama too. And they would seize on that as right, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And it was always no, I mean it in the exact opposite direction. The reasons I've been upset with Obama is because he's hasn't been anywhere near progressive or liberal enough for my taste, and they think that he was the Karl Marx of American presidents or whatever. Karl Marx had been black.
Yeah. You're disappointed in Obama because he droned too many Afghans, and they're disappointed with Obama that droning Afghans didn't make him erect.
Right. Yes. Right. I feel like another thing definitely going to come up in this speech, because I already talked about it in a lot of the other speeches so far, has to do with law and order. They did the whole they always do the law and order thing. Law and order was a huge part of the campaign in 2016 too, and they're still leaning on it right now. last night, Mike Pence was talking about the general lawlessness in American liberal cities like Minneapolis and Portland and Kenosha, he said. But there's never any mention of like what precipitates these protests or where any of that is coming from.
Yeah.
And just for example, there's been a lot of other protests during the Trump presidency, right? Obviously, there were people on Trump's side protesting the country being shut down because of coronavirus earlier this spring, but also other liberal protests like the women's marches and the women's protests right after Trump was inaugurated back in January of 2017, stuff like that. Like, I mean, frankly, white people protest, white people on both sides, right? Mm-hmm. And people aren't getting fucking shot at those protests. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. People aren't getting just violently put down at those protests. And why not? Like, how do you explain that other than the obvious?
I forget which, it was either Michigan or Wisconsin when the open up protests, when open carry people pushed past cops with loaded rifles and occupied a state house and were intimidating legislators. The legislators had to leave the building because they occupied the gallery with weapons, which is, maybe you should have more restrictive gun laws. If you don't want to be in a room with open carry people, maybe you should pass a law that you can't carry guns into the state house, and that none of those guys got shot.
Exactly. And so following on to that and kind of transitioning a little bit to talk about Kenosha and all that for a minute, there's multiple reports and everything about this. So at protest in Kenosha after Jacob Blake was shot, at the protest that resulted from that, three people were shot, two people shot to death by a pro-Trump 17-year-old gun-carrying lunatic from nearby in Illinois. What was the guy's name? I had it pulled up here earlier. It's fucking.
I think it's what? Kevin something. I forget. Doesn't matter.
Help me out here.
Call him Chud.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't matter. But anyway, it's a Trump guy who had Kyle Rittenhouse. That's his name. Sorry, okay. That's my bad.
That's
Kyle
right.
Rittenhouse, 17-year-old pro-Trump guy who on his Twitter pages he says like, "I'm just trying to be famous." He had posted multiple TikTok videos of him at Trump rallies and things like that. He goes to the protest in Kenosha and ends up murdering people. And he has been arrested and he has been charged with murder. But there's multiple reports and videos and stuff from the protests the night that happened that shows the cops at those protests like giving him water, but helping him along basically. It's a 17-year-old with a gun, right? And the cops are like, glad to have you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen video to video of like police officers dapping up Proud Boys and doing like the covert OK sign at them and stuff like that, which is, I mean, they've chosen a side. And it's not the side of law and order, by the way. And I don't like the phrase makes less sense to me than it ever has in my life because it's meaningless. It just means you obey the rules so I don't have to, which is the weirdest thing. Law and order aren't even the same concept because an ordered society tolerates a ton of disorder so people can speak. Like we have a ton. A free society is to balance a ton of stuff, right? Like you have, right now we have a open carry, right? And you have a First Amendment. Now those are in conflict, obviously, when somebody shows up with a gun to threaten people who are expressing their First Amendment rights. And the rule of a law enforcement officer should be to try to find a balance. Like be like, hey, guys with a gun, maybe you stand further back. Maybe we keep these sides a little apart so both sides can be doing what they're supposed to be doing in a free society, right? That's a lot of this is managing human behavior. That can't be written down on a page as a rule to be followed. It's just coaching people through social situations, right? And that would be a functional role for law enforcement in this scenario. But instead, they picked a side and amped the armed side up, and two people are dead, and the other guy got shot in the arm. And
right. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead. No. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Oh, it's just like and people trying. I've seen a couple different like TikTok, like not TikTok the app, but like try to figure out timestamp of what happened in what order, because I haven't really seen a good explanation of what actually started the violence here. Although it's pretty clear that after he shot the first guy, whatever precipitated that, because people are saying he threw a Molotov cocktail over the slowed down the video show, throwing a paper bag with something in it. Although one angle, like maybe it was on fire, a flaming bag or poo or something, I don't know. So he kills that guy, and then other people see him commit murder and try to stop him, which is what you're supposed to do with a mass shooter, right? The right wing has been saying, oh, you just rush them. That's what we've been coaching school kids to do, is to rush shooters in mass shooter situations. So they do that. But people are saying, oh, well, they attacked him, so that's self-defense. So that's the new spin on it now. Well, who's allowed to be a vigilante and who isn't? Because he shot a guy, he took a gun to a place to defend buildings, and he's a vigilante who you support. But the vigilantes who are trying to stop a guy shooting people, they deserve to get murdered because they're attacking a guy. So who's really
right? And just to act like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of them would frame the argument as people trying to maintain law and order, and then anarchist vigilantes on the other side, and that's what's going on. And race doesn't factor into it, right? But
what definition is? You're shooting people in the head to stop a window from being broken. Like,
right.
How is that maintaining order instead of being more disordered?
Right. Well, it's like we talked about on Tuesday, talking about Jacob Blake. Like, people already, like, what happens every single time the police shoot a guy, they start talking about all the other things this guy had done prior to being shot by the police. But every time, so far, every single time, like, look, if a dude has a gun and is shooting at cops and he gets shot back, yeah, that's just what happens. You can't be doing that. It should be a last resort. But what always happens every single time one of these cases comes up is that it's like, well, I don't care. I don't give a shit what else he did before that. It doesn't justify being executed. And Jacob Blake he's not dead. He's alive, but he was paralyzed. But still, like, none of those arguments hold any water for me at all, because none of those things should result in a death sentence. I don't care if the person liked meth or whatever the fuck. They shouldn't be shot over it.
His dad said he's handcuffed to the hospital bed. The guy can't,
right.
He's lost the ability to walk and needs to be on life support.
Right.
They have him handcuffed to the bed.
Yes. And another thing about this, like I said, that people try to frame it as though it isn't racially motivated. It's like, oh no, it's anarchist and whatever else, but they don't bring race into it. If the RNC, multiple speakers this week have explicitly stated that we don't have a problem with systemic racism. Nikki Haley was like, they say America's a racist country. I'm telling you right now, America is not a racist country. Things like that. But She said America's not a racist country, and then she immediately pivoted to how much prejudice her parents faced when they first moved here and how they overcame it to achieve the American dream. Right. But I just don't know how. Watch this clip I'm about to show. Me and you have both seen it. But for all the viewers, watch this clip and look me in the face and tell me that none of this shit is racial at all. Mark, tell me if you don't hear audio.
The thing is, this is from 2018.
Yeah,
this clip.
You're right.
And
still, though, this dude this is the sheriff of Kenosha, and you're right. This clip is not related to Jacob Blake. This was 2018 when they had a spate of like shoplifting cases.
This was about. I was going to say this. When you listen to this clip, know that it's about five shoplifters got caught.
Shoplifting. And again, this dude is still he's the sheriff still. This clip is old, but he's still this guy. But anyway, so listen to this. And Mark, if you don't hear anything, tell me immediately so I can fix it. All right, here we go.
Society has to come to a threshold where there's some people that aren't worth saving. We need to build warehouses to put these people into it and lock them away for the rest of their lives. Let's put them in jail. Let's stop them from truly, at least some of these males going out and getting 10 other women pregnant and having small children. Let's put them away. At some point, we have to stop being politically correct. And I don't care what race, I don't care how old they are. If there's a threshold that they cross, these people have to be warehoused. No recreational time.
Threshold is shoplifting.
In the jails.
Right.
We put them away. We put them away for the rest of their lives so that the rest of us can be better. In society,
Right, exactly. So yes, people should be warehoused, um, sterilized, locked up forever away from the rest of society for shoplifting. And again, of course, like they always do, he makes a point in the middle of that to say, I don't care what race you are, whatever. But dude, watch that shit and tell me that he ain't talking about fucking black people.
Yeah.
Like,
well, he's also like the extremely coded language when he says from getting women pregnant to having small children. It's, last time I checked, everyone who has children has small children, but these are
right.
apparently especially small, useless children these people are having, which is a real problem, for society. We gotta figure out. I don't know.
Yeah, so I just like I don't, and so also as a side note, that's the sheriff in Kenosha. There also is a police chief, right? It's a city county situation, and the police chief this week, when asked about the people who were murdered by Rittenhouse, by the 17-year-old, he said, here's what he said. He said, quote, everybody involved was out after the curfew. I'm not going to make a great deal of it, but the point is the curfew's in place to protect people. Had persons not been out involved in violation of that, perhaps the situation that unfolded would not have happened. If it is the persons who... This is not the action, I believe, of those who set out to do protests. It is the persons who were involved after the legal time, involved in illegal activity that brought violence to this community. So still, very, very thinly veiled, straight up blaming the protesters for being shot by a 17-year-old lunatic.
Also, the curfew has nothing. Curfews are a pretext to give police license to beat and arrest people.
Right. Yes, just for existing. Like, yeah. Right. That's the only reason that curfews like that exist, is so that if they have a curfew, you don't have to be doing anything other than existing after a certain point on the clock for them to retaliate.
If you're protesting at 7:59, you're a good citizen. 8:01, you're carrying your ass to jail.
You're a vigilante, yeah.
And it's also like here in LA, our experience was as soon as they stopped having the curfews, there were no more confrontations. It was literally just the curfew escalated conflict because the police would, put on the riot shields and charge into crowds. Once you stop on the curfew, the same 7:59 protest kept on happening till 11. Then people went home peacefully. It's literally just the police charging into crowds to enforce an arbitrary curfew. And also, it's how ridiculous it is to have a curfew. It's like, we fucked up and shot a dude we shouldn't have shot. So now all your asses have to go to bed at 8:05 p.m. It's fucking stupid.
Right. Well, yeah. And it's also like related to that, again, like we alluded to it earlier, but they talk about like the burning of public buildings and shit like that, or looting and rioting and windows getting broken and whatever else. But like, they never ever bring up why those gatherings even existed in the first place. So first of all, obviously, I've been to a bunch of protests here in LA. There have been protests in LA where shit like that has gone down. I have not seen any of that ever. And regardless, even at the ones where there was fucking looting and that sort of thing, 98% of the people there are not doing it. But furthermore, no one would be there gathering in any capacity if you hadn't murdered another guy. And they never address the cause of any of these symptoms that we're all seeing. The coverage of the shooter in Kenosha, the 17-year-old Kyle kid, the stories still blame the protesters. It'll say stuff like 17-year-old kid arrested in connection with shooting deaths that happened at Kenosha protests that turned violent. It's like, well, who turned it violent, and how was it connected, and what side was he on? And I don't know. I don't understand. I don't want to do the outside agitator thing and all that dumb shit, because what happens here is everybody's vilifying their neighbors, acting like their neighbors are some sort of like invading horde. And this kid, apparently, it was across state lines, but it was only like it was close by.
his mom drove him up to shoot people.
Right. Yes. His mom. God.
Mom dropped him off at the murder.
It's dude. It's so fucking. Everything is so ridiculous right now. But yeah, like he goes up there with a gun, thinking he's gonna like help the police control this lawlessness or whatever the fuck. And then he gets there and the police are extremely receptive to him and supporting what he's doing and all this. And then, so, you know, why wouldn't he feel empowered to shoot some of these obvious criminals, you know, in this guy's mind because of the message that has been sent by the other side as it relates to all of this shit, you know?
Yeah, and I mean the police aren't exactly. I mean, no police department in the United States right now, thanks to the war on terror, is underarmed. You see these random police departments in Ferguson, Missouri, Kenosha, Wisconsin. It's the minute something goes wrong, they look like characters from Call of Duty or Halo. They do not need your help. The only thing you're doing, and this is how they used him, is you get to be more violent than they can while the cameras are on. Right. And they applaud reliability.
Yeah, and another thing about that, I used to, as I mentioned multiple times before, I used to work for the federal government, my old day job, to work for the Department of Energy, but still, as part of that, we had a lot of training. You know, the society we live in nowadays, we had yearly training on active shooter situations, how to handle an active shooter. And law enforcement was always involved in those trainings, and every single time they made a huge point in any active shooter training from law enforcement of do not get involved. Like if you are present for something like that, we don't want you coming out with your gun and trying to be fucking Batman or whatever. Batman don't use guns, but you know, you get the point. Because, and this is obvious, like, we're not going to know. We see you with a gun trying to be a vigilante. We're just going to see a guy with a gun, you know, and you're going to get shot. All you do is complicate matters. They preach that shit to death when it comes to just regular active shooter trainings. But then a white kid shows up to a racially motivated protest with a gun and they're just giving him water and shit, and that's all fine. You know what I mean? Like, something's very fucky there, is my point. And it's pretty obvious. It's pretty obvious what is behind it all.
Yeah, it was two white kids. It was two white dudes that got killed, right? Or one of them was, at least, I know. Right. So the guy got shot in the arm was a white dude. He apparently had a gun, but of course, how come one guy gets to defend himself with a gun, the other guy doesn't? I don't know.
Right. So, related to this, a rare story on the evening Skews from the world of sports. Because,
before we move on, Coach, I did just know it feels like things are getting worse, but just know it's always kind of been this bad. Someone was reading Nixon Land and posted screen grabs from it. After Kent State, 58% of people surveyed thought that the National Guard was right to kill those 4 college students. And the local newspaper was flooded with positive letters thanking the National Guard for killing those college students. And one lady they interviewed said she was proud of the Guard, and the person was like, well, your 3 sons were out there. And she said, well, if they didn't follow orders, they should have been mowed down too. So, yeah.
Okay, I didn't know any of that. I mean, like, I guess I'm you know, not that surprised, but no, I didn't know that. That's crazy. And also, like, I'm sure you could find plenty of people racist, or well, not even. Well, I'm sure these people would also be racist, but like just hardcore conservatives still out there today who, if you got into the conversation with the Kent State situation with them, would say basically the same thing. Like, yeah, it was justified or whatever. But I'm sure you could find those people. But generally speaking, the way we look back upon the Kent, I mean, the Kent State massacre. It was a massacre. Do you know what I mean? Like the way it's like sort of taught and generally discussed outside of like extremist motherfuckers is like what a stain on modern American history this was. What a tragedy this was that this happened. And
because
that's how history works and progress works. You know what I mean? Like
people are
going to be saying the same thing about this shit.
Yeah.
However many 40 years later or whatever, however far removed we are from Kent State now.
People lie to their kids and lie to themselves about where they were at the time. And what happened was, after we lost Vietnam, everyone generally conceded that Vietnam was a bad idea, and therefore the kids at Kent State were right. And so I agree with them, of course, obviously. It's just like there've been tons of surveys. Like if you ask everyone who was alive at the time, like 70% of people say they voted for JFK. But he barely won that election and probably had some cheating in Chicago to get across the line. And so they're obviously lying. My friend, a funny version of this, my friend, his mom swears the first time she voted for president was for JFK, except he did the math and she was 16 in that election. And he was like, but Mom, you couldn't have voted for JFK. You weren't. And she still insists she voted for JFK and she was 18, even though she was born 2 years too late to have done that. So, yeah.
Right. Because I think there's a thing in most all people that they want to be like, they want to have been on the right side of a thing, right? But when you try to make that argument to people who are, super into Law and Order right now, or whatever, pick your scenario, the argument of like, how are you going to explain this shit to your grandkids? You know what I mean? Like, you don't think they're going to be ashamed of you, and it doesn't make any kind of impact on people right now, even though thousands of years of history illustrate that that's exactly what's going to happen. Like, it is going to be shameful in 50 years, less than 50 years, but like your grandchildren are going to be ashamed of you for shit like that. And so what's probably going to happen statistically is you're going to end up lying about it to them, like you were just describing. So why not try to do better in the moment, but people can't see it that way.
I mean, we can't have any conversation in this country without like it going immediately to level 10. Like for example, like a fairly benign request after all these videos is like, hey, we need to do something to, at a minimum, have figured a way to get police to be less quick to pull the trigger, in general, right? It seems like a fairly straightforward ask for good government purposes, because these are people that are funded by taxpayers. Like, just shoot less people. And then immediately people go, well, that's communism. Like, I don't even understand how the two things connect. What we actually argued about. Does anybody think police shooting more people is good? But you look at, but we do this with everything, man. Look at like I was reading about, we're talking masks a couple weeks ago, and I was looking at like the same arguments people had about seatbelts in the 90s, that people were saying that was a step towards totalitarianism to have seatbelt laws. Is anyone going to stand up right now and be like, I said in 1995 or whatever that seatbelts were going to lead to authoritarian communism, and by God, I was proven correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And yes, I mean, like, you're 100% right that everything to a level 10 immediately. We're so polarized right now, and that's such a huge part of it. Like, I think people on both sides do this thing, but still, you meet someone who's on the opposing side from you, like in the macro sense, generally speaking, and we have this tendency right now in America to immediately place that person on the extreme end of that spectrum, you know what I mean, without actually talking to them at all. Like, I go, I'm from a very small town in Tennessee. I'm from the rural, deep South. I still go back there every year when there's not a fucking pandemic going on. And I'm still friends and hang out with all the guys I went to high school with, like a lot, we're still close. And a lot of us are fellow liberal rednecks. A lot of them are on the same side as me, but some of them are not. Some of them are more, stereotypical in that way with their political leanings. And we have these conversations, we're like, and this is like verbatim, an actual conversation. One of my buddies I grew up with will come up to me while we're there on the lake or whatever, and just be like, I just don't understand why you believe I shouldn't be able to own a gun. Like, I'm like, me, like I'm I'm a family man. I got kids. I like to hunt. Like, you know me, Trey. I ain't gonna. What's wrong with me owning a gun? Why do you believe I shouldn't be able to own a gun? It's always like, I don't believe that, Kobe. Like, I don't even a little bit believe that. What I actually believe is, and start laying, like, there are plenty of people in this country who shouldn't own a gun because they're lunatics or they're extremists or whatever, and it shouldn't be easy for these people to get a gun, and actually, like, lay it out. And, the guy's always like, typically ends up being like, yeah, well, I agree with that. Like, we end up discovering we pretty much agree. We agree on 95% of it where that particular issue is concerned.
Most people,
but they automatically put me in that, at that other 5% or whatever, without even actually talking to me about it. And again, I think people on both sides do that, but it's what leads to a lot of the bullshit we have, I think.
Yeah, I mean, so social media is as we do this show on Facebook, social media is a disease that leaves people unable to see humanity in anyone else. You divide it into camps real quick, but you actually talk to a person, you realize you do agree on 97%. You might rank your order of priorities differently, right?
Right.
Whereas, like, if your kid got shot in a mass shooting in a school, gun control might be your number one issue, right? But if you live in a border state and work in a factory, stopping illegal immigration might be your number one. It's like, but things get ranked in different priority orders, but people tend to agree generally on stuff. Like, there was a great special Jordan Klepper did a couple years ago where he interviewed people in all different ends of the gun range of the gun debate, and everyone generally agreed, like 90%, and the polling supports it. 90% of people. Like, this guy who, like, had 500 guns and makes his living doing, like, machine gun instruction, who was like, yeah, I mean, why wouldn't I wait 3 days?
Right.
I don't want somebody who has 5 convictions for beating women to own a gun. Why would I be in favor of that?
Right.
Their debates are stupid, and they're heightened by media apparatuses who make money off conflict.
Yeah, and like I'm saying, people on both sides do it, but I mean, hell, I remembered another story about me doing the same thing. My wife is from a different but very similar culturally, extremely rural area in Tennessee on the other end of the state. Her family's all, they're rednecks and shit, and I was back there. The last time we went back there, I was on the porch, and her uncle shows up, been drinking tequila. Right, and I know this guy, I like him, but he's red as fuck. It's her Uncle Orby. His name's Orby. Tell me that ain't a red ass. But he's sitting out there on the porch, and he knows I'm the liberal queer in the family or whatever. And so he gets into guns, right? And he's like, look, he goes in this whole thing, and he goes, the only thing wrong with buying a gun in the United States of America. And in my head, I'm like, oh, Jesus, here we go. But he goes, the only thing wrong with buying a gun in the United States of America is that it's too goddamn easy to do. And I was like, I did not see that. That's not where I thought you were going with that, Uncle Orby. But, and then again, we had a conversation about it and pretty much agreed on most of it. And that's how that shit tends to go if you actually see it through. But, like we said, that's not the starting point a lot of people have. All right, so I did want to at least mention in the last episode, a mere 2 days ago, we signed off talking about the NBA and how great it was, how great the playoffs had been, like from an entertainment perspective. I was like, if you ain't watching the NBA playoffs, you should be. And then yesterday, albeit temporarily, the NBA playoffs got canceled because of these exact issues we're talking about. The Milwaukee Bucks, Milwaukee, Wisconsin is like, Kenosha is like a suburb of Milwaukee. Like, they're essentially the same place. And the Milwaukee Bucks refused to take the floor yesterday against the Orlando Magic. They took a stand. And then after that happened, it set off this sort of domino effect where the rest of the players on the rest of the teams also took a stand and started. And like you mentioned this earlier, people were saying the players are boycotting the league. But as you pointed out, no, they're not boycotting anything. They're on a strike. They went on strike as a response to this the situation we have, and like they're in the bubble down there. They're not allowed to leave. They've been there for like weeks at this point.
2
And
months.
I'm sure they feel.
Yeah.
I'm sure they feel very helpless, right? And like, what else are they supposed to do? So they took a stand, and they had a bunch of meetings among the players. They've ended up they resumed the playoffs. But like, I felt last night and thinking about it, I don't know how you feel about it, but I think you can make an argument in either direction, because as far as just like the players go, because there were a lot of players like, fuck this, we're striking, we got to do something, and this is doing something. And of course, I respect and support that. But there were also a lot of people, not just players, analysts too, like Charles Barkley. Kenny the Jet Smith walked off the set of Inside the NBA in support of the players striking. So he was basically saying, like, yeah, fuck this, we're done. We're taking a stand. But Charles Barkley and other analysts and other players, their position was, why not use this platform that we have, this massive platform that we have, to continue the conversation? You know what I mean? And I think that's a valid argument too. You make your point, but I definitely think there's something to be said about like keeping the cameras on you while you say the right thing. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I think they got way more attention than they've been getting by doing this big dramatic
for sure.
So I think that this was a huge compromise position, because they're going to, I guess, restart basketball in a couple of days. But I think we talk about this stuff tactically and strategically instead of like on a basic humanity level. Like, people talk about like how the protesters should be behaving, and the thing is, they're not organized. It's a community expressing rage.
Right.
They're not thinking tactically or strategically or how it affects the election. They're fucking pissed, and they want you to know they're pissed because no one's listened to them for hundreds of years.
Yeah, shut up and dribble.
Yeah. So, and the Bucks specifically, not only are they from the area where Jacob Blake got shot, but they Bucks players, Sterling Brown, that plays for the Bucks 2 years ago, he's in the middle of a big lawsuit because he parked in a handicap spot at a convenience store. Cops rolled up. He shouldn't have parked in a handicap spot, right? This is one of those things where I'm not defending, give him a ticket, right? But he had his hands in his pockets. It made the cops nervous. He had his hands in his pockets. So they tased him and beat him and cuffed him and arrested him, right? And so he's in the middle of a big lawsuit against them. Bucks had a player named John Henson. It was a big incident like 3 or 4 years ago. He's not with the team anymore, but he was trying. He's a wealthy guy. He plays in the NBA. He was trying to go buy some jewelry at a high-end store, and they wouldn't buzz him in because he didn't look like a guy who could afford high-end jewelry. But and then also there were Bucks players who played with Thabo Sefolosha, who was a guy who was with the Knicks and got beaten by police and got his leg broken a couple of years ago. So this isn't just
and his career ended, right? Like he didn't play anymore after that.
I'm not sure, but I haven't heard his name in a broadcast for a while, so that tracks. But he was also suing NYPD, I think, and there were guys on the Bucks who were his teammates at the time. So what I'm saying is, this might not be strategic. It might not have been a protest move. They might have been too fucking pissed to play. Do you know? Right. And like, it might have just been like, screw this, man. Like the Kyle kid had just killed 2 people at a protest. No accountability from the police. They're just like, I don't want to play. I want to make a big statement. And I want to call the attorney general and fucking yell at him, which is what they did. And people are like, well, what did it accomplish? Well, they were playing the Orlando Magic. It was owned by Betsy DeVos's family. And the DeVos family had to come out and support the Magic also not playing.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, like you said, it brought way more attention than they would have by just continuing to play the games with the messages on their jerseys and all that, which is also great. But it definitely was effective in that way. And people were like, well, what do they want to happen? What are the NBA owners supposed to do? Like shit like that. But you're talking about billionaires. Yeah. In this country, you start taking money out of billionaires' pockets, and shit will happen, like undeniably. You know what I mean? Like we live in a fucking plutocracy. The billionaires are the ones who control everything, and you start taking away their nut, and that's how shit actually happens. Now we can affect change in other ways too, but I'm saying I don't know how you could even make the argument that something like that wouldn't be effective. But I'm saying I'm not going to hate on any player or anybody involved in the NBA who feels the other way about it. That I was saying, you know, what I was saying earlier. Like, the idea that we've got all the eyes on us now for doing what we did. Now we can use that to continue the conversation and whatnot, as opposed to just going away. Like, if they just went away, it would be talked about for the next little bit for sure. But I guarantee you it would not be talked about in, mainstream media for the amount of time that the playoffs will end up going for. So, I mean, I think there's something to be said for that argument too. But I think that what they did is commendable, and, I'm all for it for sure.
They not to get too deep into NBA player finances and financing, but they risked a lot of money and livelihoods, and a lot of these guys aren't rich. Like LeBron is. Right. The NBA has its own wealth inequality system, but LeBron makes $40 million a year, and it's 10% of his income. And other guys are on like $800,000 a year contracts, and if you only play half the year, and you take off 15% off the top, and have to maintain 2 residences, and you're only going to be in the league 3 years, and you got to try and stretch it out over to live on the rest of your life, while you also go try to get a job selling cars. Or it's a big difference in their life, and they I'm not saying they're going to be poor, but they live closer to to the check than we imagine they do. A lot of them.
Right, and also they're that's the thing. Again, a lot of people have this idea of shut up and dribble or whatever. Like, they're just there to be entertaining and whatnot. But with the billions of dollars involved, and also all the kids that look up to pro athletes and stuff, like these guys, not just in the NBA, but just professional athletes, they have a huge amount of influence, and a massive platform, undeniably, and people want to tell them to just shut the fuck up and do their thing. But and this is true for a lot of conservatives, a lot of rednecks too. You take sports completely away for these issues for a long enough amount of time, and I guarantee you it would change some people's minds. There's a quote that has become famous on the internet, and I can't remember the source of it. I just see it parroted a lot, which I agree with, which is that sports are the reward for a functioning society.
It's a Major League Baseball player that said it, but I blank him. He was talking about COVID, but
but that's that's fucking spot on in my opinion. You want to be able to sit back and eat your peanuts and enjoy, fucking gladiator shit, then everything else needs to be in place for that to happen.
Yeah. I mean, I was trying to looking for it and I found it, but you want to know like one thing they accomplished. So the Rockets owner is a big Trump supporter named Tillman Fertitta. He's a funny character because he's like one of those flop sweat, half broke rich dudes who's whose finances are teetering, teetering pyramid. But he also, his family made their money being in the Houston Mafia. So there's that. But he was forced to. Trump said his dumb shit about the NBA today, and he had to come out and rebuke him. This is a guy who's on CNBC basically every day talking about, he owns Landry's Steakhouse and a bunch of restaurants and shit, the Bubblegum Shrimp Factory and all that stuff. So he had to come out and what is this quote? He is cast as a rebuke. He says, they're human beings and they have the right to do whatever they want to do, and we're partners in this, and they choose not to play. That's their right, okay? And it hurts them financially, and it hurts us financially, and it hurts them all the other ways, and it hurts us all the other ways, and that's just the way it is. And so I try to think of it as a pause, And so basically, it was cast as a rebuke of Trump, who he was at the White House pretty regularly.
Yeah, but again, just having said all of that, I'm thrilled on a selfish and personal level that the playoffs will continue, because as I said Tuesday, they have been hitting. But yeah, I'm all for them.
Yeah, I like basketball too.
Let's see. Yeah, I like basketball. Let's see what you guys are saying over here. Well, yeah. Let's see. While I'm waiting on some of these to come through, something I saw earlier. Apparently, Nancy Pelosi said in a press conference that, in her opinion, Joe Biden should refuse to debate Donald Trump because she said that Joe Biden shouldn't legitimize his bullshit. She didn't say bullshit. She said, I would not legitimize a conversation with him. And I don't know how you feel about this, Mark, but I go back and forth on the idea that I don't think, like, I think you were talking about like strategy or whatever. Sure, Biden, things are going great for Biden right now as far as the numbers and all that goes. So like you may not need it or whatever, but the other part of me is like, dude, if you can't, like, fuck him, like, look at how he talks about things and the way he argues, and like, I feel like if I was in Joe Biden's shoes, I'd be chomping at the bit to take that motherfucker down. Me personally.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I mean, I don't really know what debates do anymore. I mean, everybody thought Hillary smashed him at all three debates in 2016, and he won the election. So I don't know how it's swayed. Like, I don't know if anybody's persuadable with that stuff anymore. The theatrics, I guess, matter more than the substance, and so the risk is Biden says something stupid, or he has one of his sundowning moments and flubs a bunch of stuff. I mean, strategically, it bothers me way more that he doesn't have a single field office and no one's doing any door knocking. He's doing the same thing Hillary did, but didn't no operation in Wisconsin or whatever.
So, all right, here we got some comments for you. Look here, this one's from YouTube. You can tell by the name there. 1400 says, "Come on, no one likes Nancy Pelosi. If her keeps being, if he keeps being basement Biden, he will lose by a landslide." I just don't like. It just doesn't seem to be the case for me. Like, if you and Tam Alex says punch back, and I, again, on a personal level, I agree with that. But I feel like if you're talking about strategy, you can't really argue with the way it's going so far. Like, if he's gonna like bury himself and continue to do so, then fucking let him do it. But
by the way, he's doing a ton of media appearances, and he's doing like a lot. Like he's doing, online speeches, and he's giving interviews to every outlet that'll talk to him. Like, he's not like this basement thing is like he's not doing rallies. But do you want a 77-year-old guy traveling around a lot in the middle of a pandemic?
Right.
Because if he ends up on a ventilator, that's not going to help.
Yeah. Cerberus, the guardian of the river of hell, if I'm not mistaken, the guardian of the entrance of hell.
Three-headed dog.
The three-headed dog who guards Hades down there, says the guy who wants to debate knows he's losing. This is about Pelosi saying this about Biden. I'm not seeing Biden out here calling for the debates or whatever. But on that note, and related to what I'm saying, I feel like if you get to a point where Trump is like calling you out for refusing to debate, I would fucking do it. You got to do it. There's other people who were commenting like, I don't trust Biden's capabilities or whatever. But dude, you're right about what you said, Mark. I also agree. In 2016, I thought Hillary Clinton dusted his ass in every debate, but it didn't get represented that way. But all the reviews were like the famous one was Chuck Todd saying she seemed too prepared or whatever. But that was like only criticism. But the polling showed like 70-30 she won every debate. It just didn't matter to anyone. It just didn't matter, and it probably won't matter. But I don't know. Maybe it's like the fucking redneck in me or something. If it gets to a point where they're it's basically insinuating that you're a coward for not debating him or something. Like, no, you can't have that. Go out there and whip his ass. But Cerberus is right. It's a dynamic as old as time. If you Lisa Parker, I would say no. Right. Will debates move the needles at all? And no. Right, I think that's kind of what we're saying right now, and I do agree with you, Mark, that they probably won't, unless one of these old fuckers pees his pants or wanders off stage and literally collapses. I don't think it does anything.
But what Cerberus is, the person who is losing wants more debates. There are two separate West Wing plot lines about this. There's go back to 2016 where Bernie wanted 10 debates and Hillary wanted 2, and they did 3 or 4 or whatever. It's always the dynamic.
Yeah. Roger Thompson says, I think Pelosi was just cornering / goading Trump to show up. I mean, I could see that too. He certainly hates Pelosi, and he also, it's funny because I'm sitting here saying, like, you can't let him talk shit, but obviously Trump has a lot of that in him too, where, if anybody says anything remotely negative about him, he takes it extremely personally. So
on Twitter, he's a coward face to face.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Tammy Smith rebuking earlier. Tammy Smith, I love Nancy Pelosi.
I'm not a huge fan, but I like you, Tammy. So.
Karen K.A. says, I can just imagine Joe up there shaking his head and saying, what the hell are you talking about, man?
For 2 hours.
You can't argue with stupid. No, but, you can try. Susan Carr, Mama Kamala will kick ass. A lot of people are talking about the vice presidential debates, and we brought them up on here before. That, and I said this last time too, but no, I would like to see that. But also, like, Mike Pence, is he allowed to debate a woman alone on stage? Like, will his wife allow that? Does his faith allow that to happen? I guess we'll see. Let's see here. Lisa Parker, the best option for a debate is for Biden to pick 3 points, ignore any questions, Palin style, and wail on, though.
Yeah, that's basically what they all ignore. They all ignore the question and pivot to what they want to talk about.
That's true.
They're judged on how artfully they do that, which is the bullshit part of the process. So they'll be like, "Oh, great performance, didn't answer any questions." It's great for democracy.
Right. But again, like you said, they all do that. That's one of the things that infuriates me the most about politicians is that they have that inclination to just straight up ignore the actual question and say whatever the hell they were going to say anyway.
I'll do it right. Ask me a question like I'm a presidential candidate, Trey.
Mark, what do you think about the situation with the border and immigration? Do you feel that it really is a problem with kids being put in cages, or is this being blown out of proportion?
I of course disagree with the president about putting kids in cages, but the voters I talked to, they're more concerned with health care, Trey. That's why I want to talk about my health care plan.
Yeah.
Here's
there
3.
Yeah. You got it. Paul Covert says Biden is doing fine. Just let Trump talk. And again, I mean, I think there's a lot of validity to that argument as well. I just don't think, again, just on a not a personal level, but I don't know. I don't like appearing as if you are afraid to debate fucking Donald Trump. Me personally, but
I don't think it's afraid. It's come on, who looks bad? The guy who's thirsty as shit, chasing around begging you to debate him.
Right. Well, we have one of our other commenters, and I've forgotten the name, but they said the person begging for a debate is the person who's losing. And I was
Cerberus, a 3-headed hellhound.
Yeah. Apparently, and I'll be honest, I guess I missed this in the news cycle, but we're getting a lot of comments about this. Mary Fraley said, Trump calling for drug tests, yes, but do it fairly and let them know when it's coming. So Trump brought up, he said that Joe Biden should be drug tested before a debate or something. 'Cause that's what a lot of people are saying over here.
What?
Do you know about that? Yeah, I don't know about that either. But I just, as a general note, fuck random drug tests.
Trump challenges Biden to drug test before debate.
Okay.
What does he think he's on?
Right. I don't know.
Because Trump's the one with the rumored speed addiction. Do people know that Trump's pretty well documented to be a speed addict?
Yeah, I don't know. It's like that thing with the fucking cognitive test or whatever, where Trump aced it when anyone could access it who doesn't have Alzheimer's, and then was demanding that Joe Biden take it, and Joe Biden wouldn't dignify that. He would, he laughed it off every time, and he should have laughed it off. And that's how I would look at this situation too.
Yeah, my problem with Trump isn't the European cold medicine crystal meth substitute. If it was helping, if it was keeping him awake 24/7 to be a good president instead of the live tweeting the toilet for him, I wouldn't give a shit. So like, I don't care about his drug problem. It's like baseball, man. Hit more homers. I don't care. Load him up.
Let's end on this one, Mark. Joseph John Gonzalez says, "You two suck. I'm out." All right, Joseph, you get out of here, buddy. I feel like we're getting out of here too. But thank you all for joining us on another.
I'll still pray for you, Joseph.
Thank you for joining us on another edition of Evening Skews. We'll be back as always next Tuesday. We'll see who's the dumbass then. All right, thank y'all very much.